Hello, everybody. I am very excited to have this next gentleman on the show, Dave Smith, former police lieutenant. He's an internationally known speaker, writer, and law enforcement expert. And you might know him, some of you listeners, as the one and only Buck Savage. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's great to be here. And I tell you what, I always enjoy, talking about law enforcement any chance I get. And of course, with your background and experience, this is going to be fun. So ready to go.
Absolutely, sir. I was telling you before we started, I had the honor of speaking with your wife on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she is a riot. We were laughing, I think, the entire time. But I know she's the boss. She keeps you in line. So,
hey, yeah. I wish I was this macho dude. Yeah, heck no, man. I wear the pants in this house, and there's two pants in these houses. I'm telling you.
Well, I remember, my mom had a plaque. She'd since passed away, God rest her soul. But she had a plaque in the kitchen. When we were kids, and it said one thing, Buck. It said, "If mom ain't happy, nobody's happy." And I remember that always.
truth, man. That's exactly right.
So let's talk. We were talking a little bit about it, Dave, how, law enforcement obviously is changing so much. You started in your career a while ago, you put in the time honorably. What are the big disparities that you think now? Maybe that's too big of a question, but I'll ask you anyway. What do you think has changed so much in law enforcement than when you got into it?
Well, I right off the bat, I have to say that it's not law enforcement, it's our country. And that's part of the core problem. Law enforcement has always cared about their community. Law enforcement, at least my experience,
absolutely.
And that's the thing, that's what I find so frustrating. There seems to be no one willing to tell or stand up to this odd intellectual cadre that constantly assumes the worst about us. That look, we're not Bull, and Bull Connor was one little area and one issue, and that was way back. And and by the time you and I became law enforcement officers, that we denigrated that kind of thing. We've always stood for the weak, all the helpless, all the communities, as in using code words there that everybody uses, the community. Well, no, law enforcement has become so politicized now that it's difficult for us in law enforcement to even focus on the principles and basics. We used to, and again, I'm going to say this, you guys, your generation was trained so much better than my generation. And these kids today are trained even better. We have these incredible simulators, we have all this stuff, but what's happening, we're de-emphasizing that kind of training because it's warrior training or some echoing code word off in the distance, cue the reverb unit, warrior training is bad. And you're like, wait. So then you have some states, who have defined warrior. Well, it's denigrating human beings. Well,
how's it
number
denigrating?
one?
How's it
no,
denigrating?
A couple of years ago, I posted on Facebook, in my Facebook, it's full of trainers, all these guys, I've been in the training community for decades and decades, literally 40 years. I've been nationally, running around, and I got to tell you, these guys are all going, we don't know what it is. We've never heard of it. And they go, well, do you teach skills? Well, how is a skill? Wait. First off, why is warrior bad? What are you talking about? That's all over our culture. That's
or sheepdog.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't say that anymore. Buck. You can't say that anymore. That's somehow offensive.
You're the Darth Vader of law enforcement if you're a sheepdog, by God, And it's just amazing to me, and one of the things that I really want to talk about today is this how we've allowed ourselves to be demonized and allowed ourselves to be muted whenever we try to discuss or defend ourselves. There's nothing wrong with being a warrior, but then you hear these I don't know what to call them, because I'm trying not to get woke or have the woke canceling crowd hunt me down, but they hunt me down anyway, I guess. What the heck, they're hunting me down.
I think we talked about this, Dave. I think it's become so politicized, law enforcement, where they're used as a political wing or tool by a lot of politicians out there. I remember growing up, it generally seemed, and maybe I missed something, like I said before we started, law enforcement was pretty hands off. You generally had support from both sides of the aisle. Now it seems like it's just open war on the cops. And what amazes me is, do you want to live in a society without first responders? Do you want to live in a society without cops? Sure, there are bad cops, but the overwhelming majority of the brave men and women who serve in some sort of law enforcement capacity are good, and they're honest, and they're trying to do a very difficult job in a very difficult environment. And it just amazes me that, to your point, sir, I mean, that we've allowed ourselves to get to this point, because it's not going to end up good. It's not going to end up good. The same communities, and I'll get off my soapbox, that wanted to defund and get rid of cops are now the same communities that, we need more cops.
Yeah.
And it baffles me.
I know cops need to have body cameras suddenly body cameras showed we were telling the truth 99.9%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we got to do away with body cameras. Yeah, you're right. No, we're in a political nightmare in our country right now. And I mean, look, I'm about to refill my my pickup truck here. Last month it cost me $107. I'm terrified what's going to cost me today. I'm trying to see if I have enough credits on my Safeway shopping account to get a discount.
Hold on. Somebody's whispering in my ear, Buck. I have to. Oh, it's Trump's fault. Did I say that? Okay. No, somebody was. Okay. All right.
See, I thought it was Putin all this time. I can't keep track of it. Good Lord.
Oh yeah, it's insanity. Yeah. And the worst thing about this, and because I told you what I do now, I work a lot in getting first responders help they need. But when you and I were, thank you. When you and I were, you're a little older than me, but not much. I mean, when you and I were doing this job when we started out, we didn't have social media, and we didn't have all these outlets of communication that are constantly barraging brave men and women who serve, not just, law enforcement, but military, berating them. So I think that my point is that that takes a mental toll on our brave men and women, where they're going to get eviscerated in the media. If they do something.
Right. And it's a nightmare. I can remember, in the 80s, I would interview all these officers who'd been involved in officer involved shootings, and we'd talk about the stressors. And this was long before we really ever really recognized PTSD or any of that. The officer was just stressed. The officer couldn't sleep. This officer, she'd tell me about, killing the bad guy scared me, but the way my agency's treated me since then has been far worse, and you're like, damn. So we tried to get the administrations to focus on, the, post-shooting incidents, how to investigate it without further traumatizing our people. But again, like you said, we didn't have this avalanche of critical analysis by non-expert lunatics on all these Instagrams and Twitter accounts and Facebook. And what's happened is that, I read a book years ago called 1984 Redux, and the author's supposition was we could never have a big brother because social media would prevent it. And I read it and I thought, I just put it away. And I thought, no, social media may just be that Visi screen that Smith was worried about in his apartment there in 1984, where Big Brother could watch him. And sure enough, that's what social media has become, literally Big Brother's eye in your house and in your phone and everything. And again, the ability of the left, or not just the left, it's a social activism to take chiefs down. Thank God for sheriffs, because they still, by and large in the country, even though they're being demonized right and left, a lot of them still uphold that original requirement to protect the rights of the people that Alfred the Great gave them around 900 AD when he created the office of sheriff. And these gals, they're still living up to that. Thank goodness we have that. But if sheriffs ever become appointed, there will be no one left to stand up for the rights of law enforcement.
So where do you think we're and again, a big question, let's talk about mental health and things like that. Where do you think, do you think we've gained some ground in this area, with mental health? Because things were a lot different when you and I got on the job. I think we've made some strides, but in my opinion, and I want to hear yours, sir, I think we still have a lot of work to do, because you mentioned it before. I mean, some of these admins that like to, talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Not at all. And that's the thing. I was very for, and I like, I'll say this. Look, our department psychologist was Dr. Kevin Gilmartin. I mean, he's like the
love
guru.
Gilmartin.
This guy, he's the George Washington. He's the, you pick it, he's the patent police, mental wellness. And the thing was, there was no stigma in my agency, DPS, if you went to see him, and that's the thing. We've had a hard time overcoming that stigma. Some agencies still have it. And I got to say this also. I think there's a huge cadre of inefficient and not very sharp psychologists out there. The Gilmartins who are out there advocating and really preaching the good news about how, getting healed and recovering, and you can get well. Absolutely. For every couple Gilmartins, there's some goofball that just can't heal anybody because they want to just, let's come back next Thursday and talk again, and Gilmartin's like, okay, let's get you well right now, because I got to be fly fishing here in 2 hours. So let's go, man, get well.
Well, the thing that makes Kevin so special, and this, Dave, is that he's not only an excellent clinician, but he's also been there.
He's a deputy.
He was in law enforcement. So I remember it made me think about, because I got some therapy. I mean, I think everybody deserves therapy. Everybody needs it at one point. But I remember the first therapist I went to, and God bless her. I mean, she's a young kid, and I had her crying. And I was like, am I here to help you, or are you here to help me? I mean, you want to lay on the couch? We can talk about your stuff. But that breeds trust from the get-go when you have Kevin Gilmartin up there, Dr. Gilmartin, who says, "Look, I've been there. I've been in the trenches. I've been in law enforcement for a number of years." And then immediately the first responder, at least in my opinion, is saying, "Okay, I trust this guy." Because that's the hardest thing, Dave. You know that. I mean, first responders, we're a tough crowd. We don't want to open up to anybody. But if it's another first responder,
Right. He's done it. He's had the backpack on, he's had the hike, and he's done the mountain, and that's the thing. And that's what's so great about him. I always think back, here I are sitting in his office telling me to grow up, in essence, and he's putting the locus of control on me, and every time, I ever had a dealing with him, for me, it was exactly what I needed to hear, that kind of, of analysis.
It's a tough love, man. It's
tough love. And like you said, he knows what you got going on and what the root of it is. When he would come up to our academy, when I was the skills and proficiency up there at the Arizona Law Enforcement Training Academy, he'd come in, he had a 4-hour block on Wednesday afternoon. Now, I don't know if this is a family friendly show, so if your kids are listening, cover their ears.
Earmuffs.
The Earmuffs gang, Gilmartin's 4-hour block was, this is all bullshit and everyone's an asshole.
Yeah.
And he took these cadets, and the staff we'd put him in the amphitheater with the cadet class, and the whole staff would just sit there and laugh for 4 hours and think, he's so right.
Yeah.
And he would take you from that transition from being that hopeful young crime fighter to the cynical old prick in the back of the room.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that cynical prick. And that's the thing. He would diffuse that cynicism with his counseling, and he was excellent at that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Boy, when emotional survival, and guys, gals, if you don't have emotional survival in your library,
you need to get it. It's an easy read. It's a short read. We know cops can't read, but you can do this. It's a very, it's not.
You're right. We need to do the graphic novel, emotional survival.
Well, and Dave, I tell people to what you're talking about, and that, okay, you are a unique individual, Dave Smith. So am I. You are loved, you are supported by many, but your problems aren't unique.
No.
All right. Oh, I was in a shooting. I was in a stabbing. Okay, that's horrible, but people have gone through those. People can help you with those. People like Gilmartin and other people, they can help you through those. So you're not an island, is what I tell people. I mean, you can't do it alone. And that's the hardest thing. It took me a long time to put my ego aside and put my fear aside and, oh, what are people going to think about me? I'm at a point now, Dave, where I don't give a shit what people think about me. I put it out there, and the people that need to be in my life are going to be in my life. The people that don't are not there.
I know the older I get, the more of a old kids, get off my yard. Anyway, so the thing is that, we cops, we get because that famous saying, nobody's calling a cop when they're having a good day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We see the darkest side. We all have that gallows or that mortician's humor, whatever you want to call it. Nowadays the trouble is we get in trouble for it.
But it's a coping mechanism.
It's the only way you can cope. You know what? You see things that, we know this. And how many times have you read in any given 5-year period, a law enforcement officer will see more trauma and tragedy than a person sees in their whole lifetime, And then we're shocked when they're cynical. We're shocked when they're emotionally disturbed and they can't sleep, and it's like, oh man, you understand this attacks the very root of our humanity. And that's why I'm glad, we're seeing these organizations start now that are really reaching out, that are telling, because like you said, there's a trick. Our brain does a terrible trick on us to think, we're all alone.
Yeah.
And no one understands me. No one could possibly know what I know or feel what I know. And no one's ever, and that's always a trick that's a horrible trick our brain plays on us. Yeah. People have been, every human being has, life is an adventure. Every human being's life is that way.
Absolutely.
And cops are in the midst. We're the ones going into the belly of the whale. Ours is the hero's path. I don't care what anybody says, man. When you choose the warrior's path, it's pure the heroic path all the way, man.
Yeah, I love it. Now, let's switch it up. Let's talk about something fun, because for a few minutes, how did you come up with the persona of Buck Savage?
Buck Savage. It's funny because I always liked doing comedy. When I was in college, my roommate and I at the University of Arizona invented a character called A-Man. We were in Traditions Club, and we would, before football games, basketball games, we go do these skits where I'd play the evil mascot from the other team, and my buddy Trethway, whose
somehow
brother
it's not hard to imagine that.
It's
with you,
so
Dave.
funny because Steve Trethway, his brother, became one of America's top gang investigators. Period. He's the one that took the Angels down. Hell's Angels down. So Steve's brother Chess, we do these things. We do comedy and everything. So I did radio and I had a ball. So I'm sitting there in training, 1980, sitting in the training bureau, and I go, it'd be fun if we could just put a little humorous safety tip in our training quarterly. The training quarterly is boring as hell. And let's do this little training tip, 60 seconds. Let's just make it a commercial. And being a good bureaucracy, like this, every state is, the answer is no, nope. That's Parkinson's old concept of bureaucracies have become filled with no men, no women. He's like, nope. There's no cost, there's no liability, and no problem. No. So I'm like, so I use the power of positive annoyance. I kept saying, so now my boss, that we got a new director from Phoenix, Ralph Milstead. Now he was a power lifter, and he was a real character. In fact, he's a brilliant guy. And we're sitting there in the gym one day, and I said, boy, I'd like to do something funny. He's kind of like, well, write it up. I go, well, I have. It doesn't get past right over there. And he goes, well, write it up and take it to me. So youngsters, don't do that. Okay, I'm going to say this. There is a chain of command for a reason. And the thing is, learn to sell your idea, because when you do that, oh yeah, you get to do it. But I'll say this. I had colonels that, boy, it took years for us to become on talking terms again, because I was in admin bureau and I'm in a highway patrol uniform, and the highway patrol colonel didn't have any say. And I'm going to say this, he was not a shy man. So he comes up to me, I'm in the gas pumps at the main compound there in Phoenix, filling up my administrative vehicle. And he comes up and he proceeds, that old saying, punish in private, praise.
Yeah.
He had it completely backwards somehow. I don't know that, but boy. And I'll say Larry Thompson is a good man. And when I left that agency years later, we were friends. But that day, and I understand, that's the whole thing. I was young, I was excited, I was funny, and I wanted to do this, but the chain of command exists for a reason. And I never ever thought about clearing the uniform. But then before long, Buck Savage is, I've got brass and all the videos. It's everywhere. I'm doing graduation. Everywhere. I know they're writing the director, the other agency said, can Buck Savage speak at our graduation? And I'm getting these orders to go to Denver, I'm going up to Cheyenne, I'm like, what the heck, and so I would do this little shtick, and it was fun. Calibre Press saw.
Yeah, I was going to say Calibre Press.
Next thing I know, I'm doing Streets
Tactical Edge.
Yeah. Well, see, I helped write that with Remsburg and Dave Tracy. Chuck, we sat there and I brought all of my coaching theory, which is sports psychology today, and all that stuff to it. And the thing that was so funny, Milstead, I'll never forget when I got this request to start doing the street survivals. And I, now I did want to get the director's permission because I want to take a leave of absence for a while and do it seriously for a year. And he just said, look, absolutely. You just make sure that you advertise DPS and that. See, and that's the thing. I know so many people aren't allowed to even show their uniform or do anything. But Tom Milstead, he had a firm belief, man. He wanted everybody to know we had the top, at that time, we had the top video unit in the United States. We're going to the Law Enforcement Video Association conference. I felt like a damn rock star, and that's the thing. We just, Milstead was a great visionary, and boy, died way too young, and that's the thing. But his son became the director a few years ago, and he's retired now too, Frank Milstead. But I'll just say this, that Buck Savage was something I started. I just wanted to do it, and it changed my life. I mean, literally, it opened the door for me because I could insert my own serious training into a comedic concept. I took the 10 deadly sins, failure to watch the hands, watch the hands, crime fighter, and but like one day the number 2 guy over at Maricopa County Attorney's Office calls me and says, Buck needs to go to court. So we saw drunk, arrested, same, all these sayings that have become so ubiquitous in law enforcement. Is funny,
Well, I mean, it's funny, and it opened up the doors, but you're continuing to give back to the law enforcement community by providing them training and education in a funny and humorous way, but you're still giving back. And that's what it's about. And, it's about, giving back, to the profession that was so good to you and was still was good to you when you started out, because that's what it's about. That's servant.
I have very few adult friends. Yeah. I have very few adult friends that aren't law enforcement. I mean, this is the whole thing. My whole adult life, I graduated from college. 2 weeks later, I'm in the academy, know, and that's the thing. It is a calling. It's not a job. Some people are hired and they're looking around what to do. But I got to say this, even those people, I think the first time they hit the street, they're like, okay, this is it. Those people that never convert, I think they leave it. I don't think they stay with it, and that, again, I'm not counting the people who get burned out and just leave to save their lives. Some people do that, and I understand, again, we don't know. I haven't experienced what they did or saw what they did.
Yeah. Everybody has their own path, and everybody carries their own baggage.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
And we talked about this, thank God, Dave, that there are still brave men and women everywhere that are still getting into this great profession, because I don't think they're getting into it in the droves that you and I remember, but they're still getting into it, and God bless them, because, you're not going to get rich doing this job. Like you said, it has to be a calling, and you have to be willing to go out there, especially in this day and age.
Well, that's the other thing in this pseudo-intellectual drive to destroy the reputation of law enforcement, to destroy the reputation of the people who go into law enforcement. This, it's false witnessing. It used to be a sin. Now it's a regular asset with some of these damn people, and it pisses me off. I'm still going all over the country training, and I'm going to tell you, you could take a cop in Wyoming and put him in Florida tomorrow. And once you teach him the criminal code, and you could take the Florida gal and put her in Wyoming. Yeah, that's the thing. We're very interchangeable, but there's some different cultural things you'll see, and certainly the terminologies and some of that. But cops are cops, and that's the thing that I love about it. And they're courageous, number one. That doesn't mean they don't have fear, but they go over the fear and go out and do the dang job,
Yeah, it was amazing. I was up in DC a couple of weeks back for Police Week, National Police Week, and you know what it is, and law enforcement from around the country. And we're just sitting there, and it's like we've known each other. We just have that instant connection, which is something that you don't get a lot, maybe the military, but definitely in law enforcement and the first responder community. You know what I'm talking about. You have that instant bond in most cases, and an instant connection, because it doesn't matter where you work. You're a brother or sister in blue.
Exactly. A sense of family. Exactly right. A sense of family. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And that's the thing. And that's a gift. I mean, that's a great thing. I think that's one of the things that when you're getting ready to retire, folks, just think about how you're going to maintain contact. Because I think the unhappiest retirees I know, they're still mad at that guy that gave them a day off 10 years ago, but they haven't connected. They haven't stayed connected with their friends.
Yeah. Get over it.
Get over
it. Well, I am very
let
hopeful.
it go.
Yeah, let it go. I'm very hopeful for the future. Maybe I'm just naive, but we will come back stronger than ever.
I believe so. Yes.
Dave Smith, Buck Savage. Hey, sir, I know you're all over the internet. You're all over the place. You're like an international superstar. If people wanted to reach out to you, or find you, what's the easiest location or venue?
I try to make it as easy as possible, and that thing was, but like, for instance, guys, when the internet started, I kept trying to get my own Buck Savage email.
Yeah.
Got ridiculous. Betsy go, well, try the Buck Savage. And I got that. All right. So then, but what we decided, then we got the domain bucksavage.com or jdbucksavage.com. And that goes right to our website. And then we got our emails and our phones right there now. And that's the thing, I don't know how much longer we'll keep our phone numbers there, because I had to get a steel door after a couple of Betsy's interviews, but we'll see what happens there. But that's easy. I'm easy to get a hold of. And Betsy, my boss, my wife, I was a lieutenant, so I've had the surgeries. Okay. And so I married a sergeant. I got that direct supervision. It's all really good to go, man. Good to go.
Dave Smith, God bless you, sir. Thank you for what you continue to do for our brave men and women. Thank you for your service. It was an honor having you on the show.
Thank you. And keep up the great job, man.
Thank you, sir.